Welcome to No Sleep Historian, where the past was never kind and survival was never guaranteed. They told us the Industrial Revolution was progress, steam engines, invention, modern life. But they never mentioned the ash that choked the skies or the children swallowed by machines. This wasn't an era of opportunity. It was a furnace, one that burned bodies to keep the gears turning. You don't start this story as a factory owner or an inventor. You start it barefoot, hungry, and 10 years old, working 16 hours a day beside a clattering loom that doesn't care if you live or die. This is the version of history they buried under museum gloss and textbook optimism. So the real question is, would you survive the Industrial Revolution? The time machines were fed children. Part 1. The smoke rolls in. You were born in 1805 in Manchester, England. The air already smells like coal and soot. Your home is a single damp room with your entire family. As factories rise, so do diseases and death. Childhood ends early. You're 6 years old and work is coming. The first breath you take in this world is poison. Manchester in 1805 is a city transforming into something monstrous. What was once green countryside is now a sprawling industrial nightmare where smokestacks pierce the sky like blackened fingers reaching toward heaven. But heaven feels very far away from here. Your mother labors to bring you into the world on a straw mattress that hasn't been changed in months. The midwife's hands are stained with soot and God knows what else. There's no doctor coming. Doctors are for the wealthy, and your family owns nothing but the clothes on their backs and the corner of this room they call home. The room itself is barely 12 feet square. You share it with your parents, 3 siblings, and sometimes your uncle when he's not sleeping rough in the streets. The walls weep constantly with condensation that never dries. Black mold creeps up from the floorboards like some living thing. The single window is so thick with grime that day and night blend together in perpetual twilight. Your father works 16-hour shifts at the cotton mill. When he comes home, his lungs rattle like broken machinery. His hands are stained permanently black, and his cough produces specks of blood that your mother pretends not to see. He's 32 years old, but he looks 60. The factory ages men the way fire ages wood. Your mother takes in piecework when she can, sewing buttons and mending clothes by candlelight until her eyes water and blur. She's pregnant again, though she lost the last baby to fever before it could walk. She doesn't speak of it. Speaking of the dead is a luxury when the living barely survive. The streets outside your window are rivers of mud, mixed with human waste, horse manure, and industrial runoff. Open sewers run between the rows of identical brick houses, each one packed with families just like yours. The smell never leaves your nostrils. It becomes part of you, soaking into your clothes, your hair, your very skin. Disease spreads through these streets like wildfire. Cholera, typhus, smallpox. They come in waves, claiming the weak first, then the strong. Your neighbor's baby died last week from something the adults whisper about, but won't name. The body was wrapped in newspaper and carried away in a cart with 3 others. No funeral, no prayers, just disposal. The factory owners live in grand houses on the hills outside the city, where the air is cleaner and the view doesn't include the smoking chimneys of their wealth. They ride through the workers' quarters in carriages, handkerchiefs pressed to their noses, eyes averted from the human cost of their prosperity. To them, you're not a person. You're a future unit of production. By age 3, you're walking but barely speaking. Malnutrition has slowed your development. Your legs are beginning to bow from rickets. Your teeth, what few you have, are already rotting. Your mother feeds you watered-down gruel and tells you stories about a time when there were fields where the factories now stand. You don't believe her. You can't imagine a world without smoke. Your older brother started working at the mill when he was 7. He comes home with cuts on his hands from the machinery and stories of children who disappeared into the gears. He's teaching you to tie knots with your tiny fingers, practicing on scraps of thread. The faster you work, the longer you live, he tells you. It's the closest thing to wisdom anyone in your family possesses. The factory whistle marks time in this world. It screams at dawn to wake the workers. It screams at night to release them. It screams when someone is hurt badly enough to stop the machines. You learn to recognize each call the way animals learn to recognize the cries of predators. The whistle is always listening, always watching, always hungry. At night, you lie on the floor between your siblings, listening to the sounds of the city. Machinery that never stops. Voices raised in anger or despair. The clip-clop of horses' hooves on cobblestones, sometimes screaming, always coughing. The Industrial Revolution doesn't sleep, and neither do its victims. Your 6th birthday passes without celebration. Birthdays are for children, and childhood is a luxury this world cannot afford. Your mother looks at you with eyes that have seen too much, and you know what she's thinking. Tomorrow, or the day after, or the day after that, you'll join the procession of small bodies walking through the factory gates. The machine is hungry, and it's time to feed it. The smoke rolls in thicker each day, as if the very air is trying to bury this place. But you're already buried. You just don't know it yet. Part 2. The factory takes you. At age 8, you're hired by the textile mill. The pay is pennies. The shifts are 12 to 16 hours long. The machines are faster than your reflexes. Fingers and arms are optional. If you fall asleep, they whip you. If you're late, they dock your pay. Or worse, the morning you first walk through the factory gates, you're holding your mother's hand so tightly that your knuckles are white. She's trying not to cry, but tears streak through the grime on her cheeks. The foreman, a thick-set man with tobacco-stained teeth, looks you up and down like he's evaluating livestock. Small, but the hands look quick. He grunts. Can you tie a knot? Your mother has been preparing you for this moment since you could walk. She's taught you to tie the complicated knots that will keep the textile machinery running. Your small fingers are perfect for reaching into the tight spaces between the spinning wheels and looms. The factory floor is a vision of industrial hell. Hundreds of machines clatter and roar in an endless symphony of mechanical violence. The air is thick with cotton dust that gets into your lungs, your eyes, your mouth. Gas lamps provide flickering light that creates dancing shadows between the massive looms. The sound is deafening, a constant hammering that will eventually damage your hearing permanently. Your job is to crawl under the moving machinery to tie broken threads and clear jams. The machines never stop. If production halts, profits disappear, and the foreman's job depends on keeping those wheels turning. You learn to move like a mouse, quick and silent, sliding between gears and belts that could crush you in an instant. The workday begins at 5 a.m. when the factory bell tolls. You stumble through the darkness, your empty stomach cramping with hunger. Breakfast is a luxury you can't afford. If you're lucky, you'll get a piece of bread and some water around noon. If you're not, You'll work until 9 p.m. with nothing but spit to wet your lips. The other children working alongside you are hollow-eyed ghosts. Sarah, who's 10, has been here for 3 years. She's missing 2 fingers on her left hand, lost when she was too slow pulling her hand back from a loom. Tommy, who's 7, has a permanent limp from when a spinning wheel caught his leg. He still works because injured workers are still workers, and workers must work. The overseers carry leather straps and wooden rods. They patrol the floor like prison guards, looking for any sign of slowness or inattention. If you pause to rest, even for a moment, the strap comes down across your back. If you cry out, it comes down harder. If you fall asleep standing up, which happens when exhaustion becomes overwhelming, they beat you until you're fully awake. Mary, a girl of 9, fell asleep at her station last month. The overseer beat her so severely that she couldn't walk for a week. She still came to work, crawling on her hands and knees to reach her machine. The factory doesn't care about your pain. It only cares about your productivity. The machinery is designed by engineers who have never worked a day on the factory floor. The safety measures are minimal and often ignored entirely. Gears spin without guards. Belts whip through the air without barriers. Steam pipes leak scalding water onto the workers below. The machines are built to be efficient, not safe, and human safety is always secondary to production quotas. Your first injury comes in the 2nd week. A spinning wheel catches your sleeve and pulls your arm into the mechanism. The pain is instant and overwhelming. Your shoulder is dislocated, your wrist is sprained, and your forearm is cut by the metal teeth of the gears. The overseer stops the machine just long enough to pull you free, then starts it again immediately. There's no medical treatment, no doctor, no rest. The factory foreman looks at your injured arm and determines that you can still work. He ties a dirty rag around the cut and tells you to get back to your station. The pain makes you dizzy, but dizziness is not an excuse for stopping work. By the 3rd month, you've learned to work through pain that would have seemed impossible to endure when you first arrived. Your hands are permanently stained with machine oil and cotton dust. Your fingernails are black crescents of embedded grime. Your back aches constantly from hunching over the low machines. Sleep becomes a brief unconsciousness that provides no real rest. The pay is 3 shillings a week, barely enough to buy bread and thin soup. Most of it goes to your family, who depend on your wages to survive. You keep a few pence for yourself, not for luxuries, but for the small bribes that sometimes mean the difference between a beating and a warning. The factory operates on a system of petty tyrannies. The foreman answers to the mill owner, the overseers answer to the foreman, and the workers answer to everyone. Power flows downward like sewage, and the children at the bottom of the hierarchy bear the worst of it. You learn to be invisible, to work quickly and silently, to never draw attention to yourself. But even invisibility has its limits. The machines are hungry, and they demand sacrifices. Every week, someone is injured. Every month, someone dies. The factory keeps detailed records of production and profits, but no one counts the cost in human suffering. You are replaceable, interchangeable, disposable. The worst part isn't the physical pain or the exhaustion. It's the slow realization that this is your life now. There's no school, no play, no childhood. There's only the factory and the machines and the endless cycle of work and sleep and work again. You're 8 years old and you're already dying. Part 3. Hunger is a constant. You survive on gruel, bread crusts, and boiled water if you're lucky. Your teeth rot by age 12. Rickets bends your legs. Even if you steal food, there's little nutrition. But hunger isn't a phase here. It's a permanent house guest. Hunger is your first thought when you wake and your last thought before sleep. It gnaws at your stomach like a living thing, a constant companion that never leaves your side. In the industrial Manchester of your childhood, food is not sustenance. It's survival, rationed out in teaspoons and measured in desperation. Your breakfast, when there is one, consists of thin gruel made from oats and water. The oats are often moldy, the water frequently contaminated with sewage that seeps through the city's primitive plumbing. Your mother boils the water when she can afford the coal, but coal costs money, and money is scarce. Sometimes you drink the water cold, knowing it might make you sick, because thirst is more immediate than the threat of disease. The gruel tastes like nothing. It's a gray slurry that slides down your throat and provides just enough calories to keep you standing. Sometimes there are weevils in the oats, small black insects that crunch between your teeth. You learn not to mind them. Protein is protein, and you can't afford to be particular. Bread is a luxury. Real bread, made with wheat flour, is beyond your family's means. What you eat is barely bread at all. It's made from whatever grain is cheapest, mixed with sawdust, chalk, and sometimes alum to make it whiter. The bakers add these adulterants to stretch their profits, and the workers eat them because they have no choice. The bread is hard as stone when fresh and moldy within days. You soften it by soaking it in whatever liquid you can find, water. Tea, when there's money for tea leaves, sometimes your own spit. The crusts are precious. You save them in your pockets, eating them slowly throughout the day to trick your stomach into thinking it's getting more food than it actually is. Your mother sends you to the baker's shop on Saturday mornings with a few coins clutched in your palm. The baker knows your family can't afford his best bread, so he sells you the day-old loaves, the ones starting to turn green around the edges. You cut away the mold and eat what's left, grateful for even this small mercy. By age 10, your body is showing the effects of chronic malnutrition. Your legs are bowing inward, a clear sign of rickets caused by lack of vitamin D and calcium. Your teeth are loose in your gums, some already fallen out from scurvy. Your gums bleed when you eat, staining the bread pink with blood. You're constantly tired, not just from the factory work, but from the deep exhaustion that comes when your body lacks the nutrients it needs to function. Your growth is stunted. At 12, you're the size of a normal 8-year-old. Your bones are soft and brittle. Your muscle development is minimal. You look like a child, but you feel ancient, worn down by years of inadequate nutrition and constant hunger. The factory provides no meals. Some of the larger mills have company stores where workers can buy food on credit, but the prices are inflated, and the credit comes with interest rates that ensure you'll never escape debt. Your family avoids the company store when possible, but sometimes desperation leaves no choice. Stealing food is a common crime in the industrial districts, and the punishment is severe. You've seen men hanged for stealing bread, children transported to Australia for taking apples from a cart, but hunger makes criminals of everyone. You learn to steal carefully, quietly, taking only what you need to survive, and never more. The best opportunities for theft come at the docks, where ships unload goods from around the world. You and other children wait in the shadows, watching for dropped fruit or vegetables. for unguarded sacks of grain. The dock workers know you're there, and sometimes they deliberately drop something edible where you can reach it. It's a small kindness in a world that offers few. When you manage to steal food, it's rarely nutritious. Sugar is common at the docks, imported from Caribbean plantations built on slave labor. You stuff raw sugar into your mouth, feeling the brief energy it provides, knowing it will make you feel worse later. Empty calories are still calories, and your body craves any fuel it can get. Root vegetables are easier to steal than bread because they're less carefully guarded. You learn to identify edible roots and plants growing in the waste areas around the factory. Dandelion greens, wild onions, anything that might add flavor to the endless gruel. These plants are often contaminated with industrial waste, but contaminated food is still food. The worst hunger comes during the winter months, when work slows and wages are reduced. Your family huddles together in the single room, sharing body heat and what little food remains. Your mother boils bones to make broth, bones she's begged from the butcher or found in the streets. The broth is thin and greasy, but it's warm and it fills your stomach temporarily. Some families in your neighborhood simply disappear during the hardest months. They move away, or they die, or they're taken to the workhouse. The workhouse is supposed to be a refuge for the destitute, but everyone knows it's really a prison where the poor are punished for being poor. The food there is deliberately inadequate, designed to discourage people from seeking help. You watch your parents grow thinner each month. Your father's clothes hang loose on his shrinking frame. Your mother's face becomes gaunt, her eyes sunken. They give you what little food they have, sacrificing their own nutrition to keep you alive. It's a choice no parent should have to make, but it's a choice made daily in the industrial slums. By age 12, you've learned to ignore the constant ache in your belly. Hunger becomes background noise, like the factory whistle or the sound of machinery. You function despite it, work despite it, live despite it, but it's always there, waiting, reminding you that you're always one missed meal away from starvation. The wealthy eat meat every day. They have servants to cook elaborate meals, pantries filled with imported delicacies, wine cellars stocked with fine vintages. They worry about eating too much, about growing fat, about the social implications of gluttony. For them, food is pleasure. For you, it's survival. And survival is never guaranteed. Part 4. The air you breathe. The city is choked in smog. Chimneys never stop. Coal dust clings to your lungs. Tuberculosis, black lung, and bronchitis are normal. Coughing blood becomes background noise. Children learn not to cry. It wastes breath. The air in Manchester is not air. It's a toxic soup of coal smoke, industrial chemicals, and human desperation given form. When you step outside each morning, you're not breathing. You're drowning in the atmosphere that progress has created. Every breath you take is an act of slow suicide. The coal smoke from hundreds of factory chimneys creates a permanent haze that hangs over the city like a funeral shroud. The smoke is so thick that you can barely see the buildings across the street. Street lamps burn constantly, even during daylight hours, because the sun cannot penetrate the industrial fog that blankets everything. Your lungs are black by age 10, not metaphorically black, but literally black, stained with coal, dust, and soot that has settled into the deepest parts of your respiratory system. When you cough, which you do constantly, the sputum is gray and sometimes flecked with blood. This is normal. everyone coughs, everyone spits black, everyone struggles to breathe. The factory where you work adds its own poison to the air. Cotton dust floats through the workspace like snow, getting into your eyes, your nose, your throat. The machines create their own atmosphere of metallic particles and oil vapors. The gas lamps burn with a flame that consumes what little oxygen remains, leaving you lightheaded and dizzy. Your father has what the doctors call black lung, though no doctor actually examines him. Medical care is for the wealthy. The poor simply die from their diseases, and black lung is a common way to die. His breathing is labored, his chest rattles with each inhalation. He coughs up blood every morning, wiping it away with a rag he keeps in his pocket. The textile mills produce their own particular brand of respiratory hell. The cotton fibers become airborne and lodge in workers' lungs, causing a condition known as bispinosis. Your breathing becomes increasingly difficult as the fibers accumulate in your airways. You develop a chronic cough that worsens every Monday when you return to work after the brief Sunday rest. Tuberculosis spreads through the crowded tenements like wildfire. The disease thrives in the overcrowded conditions, poor nutrition, and contaminated air that define working-class life. You watch neighbors waste away from consumption, their bodies growing thinner as the disease eats them from within. There's no treatment, no cure, no hope. You simply pray that you won't be next. The chemical factories that ring the city pour their own toxins into the air. Sulfur dioxide from the coal burning creates acid rain that eats through metal and stone. Chlorine gas from the chemical works burns your throat and makes your eyes water. Lead particles from the paint and pottery works settle into your system, slowly poisoning your blood and brain. Children in your neighborhood develop a distinctive cough by age 5. It's a deep, rattling sound that comes from lungs already damaged by years of breathing poisoned air. The cough never goes away. It becomes part of your identity, as much a part of you as your name or your appearance. You learn to time your breathing around the cough, to work despite the constant urge to clear your throat. The air indoors is no better than the air outside. Your single room is heated by a small coal fire that fills the space with smoke. The chimney doesn't draw properly, so much of the smoke stays inside, mixing with the exhalations of 6 people crammed into a space meant for one. You sleep with a rag over your mouth, trying to filter out the worst of the particulates. Rain doesn't clean the air, it makes it worse. The water mixes with the airborne chemicals and soot, creating a acidic mist that burns your skin and makes breathing even more difficult. Acid rain eats through fabric and leather, destroying the few possessions your family owns. The rain that falls on Manchester is black, leaving dark stains on everything it touches. Your younger sister develops asthma from the constant exposure to airborne toxins. She wheezes constantly, her breathing labored and shallow. During the worst episodes, her lips turn blue from lack of oxygen. There's no medicine for asthma, no treatment beyond hoping the attack passes. Sometimes it doesn't. You've seen children die from asthma attacks, their bodies simply unable to extract oxygen from the poisoned air. The factory owners and wealthy merchants who profit from this industrial hellscape live in houses outside the city where the air is cleaner. They ride through the workers' districts with handkerchiefs pressed to their faces, protecting themselves from the very pollution their businesses create. They know the air is deadly. They simply don't care about the people who have no choice but to breathe it. By age 15, if you survive that long, your lung capacity is permanently reduced. You can't run without gasping. Climbing stairs leaves you winded. Your body has adapted to surviving on less oxygen, but the adaptation comes at a cost. You're aging faster than you should. Your body worn down by the constant struggle to extract life from poisoned air. The worst part is the night air. When the factories shut down and the workers go home, the air becomes slightly cleaner, but never clean. You lie awake, listening to the sound of an entire neighborhood struggling to breathe. Coughing echoes through the streets like a chorus of the dying mothers hold babies who wheeze and gasp. Old men sit by windows, trying to catch what little fresh air seeps in from the countryside. Sometimes the wind shifts, bringing cleaner air from the farmland outside the city. On these rare days, you remember what breathing used to feel like. The air tastes different, smells different, feels different in your lungs. But these moments are brief. The wind always shifts back, and the poisoned air returns, and you return to the slow process of suffocation that defines life in the industrial city. Children learn not to cry, not because tears are weakness, but because crying requires breath, and breath is too precious to waste on emotion. You save your breathing for work, for survival, for the basic functions that keep you alive. Everything else is luxury, and luxury is something this air cannot afford. Part 5. Machines do not forgive. One slip and your hand is gone. One loose thread and your scalp is torn off. You've seen it happen. Every worker has a pawn. Your boss doesn't stop the machine. He just hires a new child. You pray that tomorrow you still have fingers. The machines are not tools. The machines have no consciousness, no mercy, no capacity for forgiveness. They simply exist to consume whatever is fed to them, whether it's cotton, wool, or human flesh. Your first week at the factory, you witness your first amputation. The machine pulls her arm into the gears with mechanical precision. Her screams are lost in the roar of the machinery. By the time someone reaches the brake, her arm is gone below the elbow. The overseer stops the machine just long enough to pull Sarah free and clear the blood from the gears. Sarah is carried to a corner of the factory where she's left to either live or die. The machine starts again within minutes. Production cannot stop for human suffering. The textile looms are particularly hungry. Your job is to reach into the moving machinery to clear jams and retie broken threads. The loom doesn't stop during these repairs. Time is money, and stopping the machine costs money. Your small hands are perfect for reaching into the narrow spaces between the moving parts. You learn to work with lightning speed, darting your hands in and out of the machinery like a snake striking at prey. But even the fastest hands are sometimes too slow. Billy, a boy of 7, loses 3 fingers to a loom when he's too slow pulling his hand back. The overseer barely glances at the accident. He just tells Billy to wrap his hand and get back to work. One-handed workers are still workers. The power looms are driven by steam engines that create tremendous force. The leather belts that transfer power from the engines to the looms move with deadly speed. If your clothing catches on a belt, you're pulled into the machinery instantly. There are no safety guards, no emergency stops, no protection except your own vigilance and luck. Young Emma learns this lesson fatally. Her apron string catches on a drive belt, and she's pulled into the power transmission system. The sound of her body being crushed is lost in the normal noise of the factory. The other workers find pieces of her scattered around the machinery. The overseer has her remains collected and the machine cleaned. Work resumes before her blood has finished dripping from the gears. The spinning wheels are equally dangerous. They turn at high speed, creating tremendous centrifugal force. If a weight becomes unbalanced, the wheel can fly apart, sending metal fragments like shrapnel through the air. You've seen workers struck by flying metal, their bodies torn open by the spinning machinery they were trying to operate. The carding machines, used to prepare cotton for spinning, are lined with metal teeth that tear the fibers apart. Workers must reach into these machines constantly to clear blockages and adjust the settings. The metal teeth are sharp enough to tear flesh as easily as they tear cotton. Your arms are crisscrossed with scars from the carding machines, thin lines where the metal teeth have caught your skin. The steam engines that power the factory are bombs waiting to explode. The boilers operate at dangerous pressures with minimal safety equipment. Boiler explosions are common, killing workers instantly and destroying sections of the factory. The owners rebuild quickly, installing new boilers that are just as dangerous as the ones they replace. The mill owners have calculated that replacing injured workers is cheaper than installing safety equipment. Children are easily replaced. The owners keep detailed records of production costs and profits, but they don't count the human cost of their efficiency. Your friend Robert loses his scalp to a carding machine when his hair gets caught in the gears. The machine tears his hair and scalp away in one piece, leaving his skull exposed and bleeding. He lives, but he's permanently disfigured, his head covered with scar tissue where hair will never grow again. The overseer deducts money from his wages for the time lost, while his wound was cleaned. The factory operates on the principle that workers are expendable. If you're injured, you're expected to continue working. If you're killed, you're quickly replaced. The machines never stop, never rest, never show mercy. They exist only to produce, and anything that interferes with production is eliminated. Safety equipment exists, but is never used. Profit matters more than people, and people are easily replaced. You develop a hypervigilance that never leaves you. Every sound, every vibration, every change in the machine's rhythm becomes a potential warning of danger. You learn to read the mood of the machinery, to sense when something is wrong before it becomes fatal. But even hypervigilance has its limits. Exhaustion dulls reflexes. Hunger slows thinking. Eventually, everyone makes a mistake. The machines are designed by engineers who will never work near them. The designs prioritize efficiency over safety, speed over protection. The engineers work in clean offices, far from the factory floor. They see the machines as mechanical problems to be solved, not as devices that will be operated by tired, hungry, frightened children. By age 12, you've learned to work despite constant fear. Your hands shake as you reach into the machinery, but you reach anyway because not working means not eating. You've seen too many accidents, too many injuries, too many deaths. The prayers you whisper are not for divine intervention. They're for simple survival. You pray that your reflexes will be fast enough, that your attention won't waver, that luck will favor you for one more day. You pray that tomorrow you'll still have all your fingers, all your limbs, all your life. The machines don't answer prayers. They only consume whatever is offered to them. Part 6. The nights aren't safer. When your shift ends, danger doesn't. Streets are filled with gangs, drunks, rats, and open sewage. You sleep beside your siblings on a dirt floor. The factory whistle is your alarm clock, if you wake up at all. The sun sets behind a wall of smoke, but darkness brings no relief. Your legs shake as you stumble from the factory gates. 16 hours of standing, weaving, dodging machinery. Your feet are swollen inside boots that have more holes than leather. The soles are so thin you feel every cobblestone, every piece of broken glass, every nail that juts from the rotting wooden planks. Manchester's streets at night are a maze of horror. Gas lamps flicker weakly, casting dancing shadows that hide more than they reveal. The lucky neighborhoods have one lamp per block. You navigate by sound, by smell, by the muscle memory of countless terrifying walks home. The gangs know your schedule. They wait in the alleys between the tenements, hungry for the few coins in your pocket. Children barely older than you, armed with broken bottles and rusty knives, desperate enough to kill for a penny. You've seen them strip corpses clean, leaving bodies naked in the gutter. The police don't patrol here. Why would they? Nothing worth protecting lives in the slums. Drunks stumble from the gin houses, their minds pickled in cheap alcohol that burns like acid. They swing fists at phantoms, vomit in doorways, collapse in puddles of their own making. Others wake up robbed, beaten, or worse. The gin costs less than food. For many, it's the only escape from the grinding wheel of industrial hell. The sewage flows in open channels down the center of each street. Human waste, animal carcasses, chemical runoff from the factories. It pools in stagnant ponds that bubble with methane. Children play in these poisoned waters because they know no better. The smell is so constant, you've learned to breathe through your mouth. But that just means you taste what you can't smell. Rats own the night. They're fearless, fat from feeding on garbage and corpses. They run in packs, squeaking and chittering, their red eyes gleaming in the darkness. You've seen them attack babies, gnawing through thin blankets to reach soft flesh. They carry diseases that spread like wildfire through the crowded tenements. Rat bites fester into gangrenous wounds. The lucky ones die quickly. Your home is a single room, 12 feet by 10 feet, shared with your parents and 4 siblings. The walls are thin timber, gaps stuffed with newspaper and rags. Rain seeps through the roof, creating puddles that never dry. The floor is packed, dirt, cold and damp, scattered with straw that hasn't been changed in months. It reeks of mold, urine, and decay. You collapse beside your siblings, their bodies pressed against yours for warmth. Your younger brother coughs blood into a rag. Your sister's fever burns through her thin nightgown. There's no doctor, no medicine, no hope. You watch them waste away, day by day, night by night, powerless to help. Sleep is a luxury you can't afford. The factory whistle blows at 4 in the morning. If you're late, they dock your pay. 3 late arrivals and you're fired. Fired means starvation. Starvation means death. So you lie awake, listening to the sounds of suffering that echo through the thin walls. Mrs. Peterson next door beats her children with a leather strap. Their screams pierce the night. The Murphy family argues over scraps of bread. Old Tom downstairs has consumption. His coughing fits shake the entire building. Someone is always dying. Someone is always being born into this hell. The building groans and sways with each gust of wind. The foundation is sinking into the swampy ground. Walls crack, floors sag. Windows don't close properly, letting in cold air and rats. The landlord doesn't care. He owns 50 buildings just like this one. If this one collapses, he'll build another on the rubble. You dream of fire, of machines, of faceless overseers with whips. You dream of escape, of green fields and clean air, but you wake to the same nightmare. The factory whistle cuts through your skull like a blade. Time to get up. Time to face another day of hell. The lucky ones don't wake up at all. Part 7. Women and the Iron Cage. If you're a girl or woman, you don't just work the loom. You risk assault daily. Pregnancy means job loss. Childbirth often means death. There's no medicine, no maternity leave, no safety net. The factory doesn't care what gender you are, just how long you last. As a girl in the factory, you learn quickly that your body is not your own. The male overseers watch you with predatory eyes. They position themselves behind you as you work, their hands brushing against your shoulders, your waist, your hips. They call it instruction. You call it survival. Fighting back means unemployment. Unemployment means starvation. So you endure their pawing hands, their whispered threats, their promises of easier work in exchange for favors. The other girls warn you about the foreman who corners women in the supply room, about the supervisor who demands visits to his office after hours, about the night shift manager who makes rounds through the dormitories. Mary Fletcher tried to resist. She slapped the foreman when he grabbed her breast. They fired her the next day. She begged for her job back, offered to work for half wages. They laughed. 3 weeks later, you found her body floating in the river, her belly swollen with pregnancy, her face purple with bruises. The factory girls live in company dormitories, packed 8 to a room in beds that never cool. The windows are barred, the doors locked from the outside. They tell you it's for your protection, but you know better. Your inventory, property, assets to be protected from theft and depreciation. The matrons who run the dormitories are harsh women, broken by the same system that's breaking you. They inspect your letters, monitor your visitors, enforce curfews with wooden paddles. They search your belongings for contraband like books, mirrors, or anything that might remind you that you're human. If you become pregnant, the choice is simple. Lose the baby or lose your job. The factory wives know which herbs to brew, which Bacalli doctors to visit, which methods work fastest. The lucky ones bleed for a few days and return to work. The unlucky ones bleed to death in their beds, or die of infection, or survive, but never bear children again. Sarah Coleman chose to keep her baby. She worked until her water broke on the factory floor. The other girls helped her to the dormitory, where she labored for 18 hours without a midwife. The baby was born blue, strangled by its umbilical cord. Sarah bled out before sunrise, her baby still clutched in her arms. Childbirth is a death sentence disguised as a blessing. No anesthesia, no sterile conditions, no trained doctors, just tired women with dirty hands and folk remedies passed down through generations of suffering. For every baby born alive, 3 mothers die. For every mother who survives, half the babies don't see their first birthday. The factory provides no maternity leave. If you can't work, you can't eat. So women return to the looms days after giving birth, their bodies torn and bleeding, their babies left with whoever will take them. The noise of the machines drowns out the crying. The heat of the factory floor dries the milk in their breasts. Annie Walsh brought her infant to work, hidden in a basket under her workstation. The baby died from cotton dust inhalation. Annie was fired for disrupting production. She threw herself from the factory roof that same night. The sexual violence extends beyond the factory walls. The boarding house keepers expect rent in flesh as well as coin. The shop owners demand payment in kind. The police, when they bother to patrol, take what they want from women who have no legal recourse. You belong to whoever has power over you. Marriage offers no escape. Factory men are broken by the same system that breaks women. They come home drunk, violent, empty. They beat their wives because they can't beat their bosses. They force themselves on exhausted women because it's the only power they have left. Divorce is impossible. Separation means poverty. Endurance is the only option. The factory treats women as disposable machinery. When your fingers become too damaged to work the fine threads, they replace you with a younger girl. When your back bends from years of standing, they find someone straighter. When your lungs fill with cotton dust and you can't stop coughing, they sweep you aside like broken equipment. You learn to make yourself invisible, to keep your eyes down, your voice quiet, your body small. You learn which corners to avoid, which men to fear, which situations spell danger. You develop a sixth sense for violence, an instinct for survival in a world designed to consume you. The other women become your family. You share knowledge, protection, comfort. When Elizabeth miscarries, you all chip in to buy her a proper burial dress. When Margaret's husband beats her unconscious, you help her hide the bruises with powder and rouge. When young Catherine arrives at the factory, scared and alone, you take her under your wing. But kindness is a luxury in hell. Sometimes you must choose between helping another woman and protecting yourself. Sometimes you must watch friends suffer because intervention would mean your own destruction. The factory doesn't just break your body, it breaks your spirit, your compassion, your humanity. You are not just a worker. You are prey in a system that feeds on flesh and blood. The iron cage of industrial society has no room for mercy, no space for dignity, no tolerance for weakness. You last as long as you're useful. When you're not, you disappear. Part 8. When the fires start. Fires rip through factories without warning. Safety exits don't exist. You've seen girls burned alive, trapped behind iron bars. Fire is not rare. It is inevitable. So is death by stampede. When panic hits, the smell always comes first. Cotton dust ignites like gunpowder. One spark from the machinery, one overheated bearing, one careless lamp, and the air itself becomes flame. The factory floor transforms into an inferno in seconds. You've smelled it before. You know what's coming. The Pemberton Mill fire started on a Tuesday morning in January. The temperature outside was below freezing, but inside the factory, the air was thick with cotton particles, floating like snow. When the first flame touched that suspended dust, it exploded in a wall of orange death that swept across the factory floor faster than a man could run. Sarah Mackenzie was working the third loom from the east wall when the flash fire erupted. Her cotton dress caught instantly. She ran screaming toward the windows, a human torch, her hair streaming flames behind her. The windows were barred. She clawed at the iron until her fingernails tore away, until her hands were burned to bone. She died pressed against the bars, her face melted beyond recognition. The machinery doesn't stop for fire. The great wheels keep turning. The belts keep moving. The gears keep grinding. Workers caught in the stampede are pulled into the mechanisms, their screams adding to the chaos. The fire spreads through the oil that lubricates the machines, creating rivers of flame that flow across the wooden floor. There are no fire exits. The doors are locked from the outside to prevent theft and desertion. The windows are barred to prevent escape. The stairwells are narrow, built for efficiency, not evacuation. When 300 people try to flee through a single doorway, they crush each other into pulp. You remember the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire in New York. The newspapers called it an accident, but you know better. The owners had locked the doors. The fire escapes were rusted and broken. The workers, mostly young women, were trapped on the 8th and 9th floors. They jumped from the windows, their skirts billowing like broken wings, their bodies smashing onto the pavement below. The factory owners calculated the risks. Dead workers cost less than safety measures. A few lawsuits, a few funeral expenses, a few replacement workers. The mathematics of human expendability. Your life has a price tag, and it's lower than you think. The fire department arrives too late, if at all. Their equipment is primitive. Their ladders don't reach the upper floors. Their hoses can't penetrate the thick walls. They stand in the street and watch people burn, powerless to help. The insurance companies will pay for the building. They won't pay for the workers. Inside the burning factory, the air becomes poison. Smoke from burning cotton, wool, and human flesh fills your lungs. You can't see, can't breathe, can't think. The floor beneath your feet grows hot. The ceiling above your head catches fire. You're trapped in a furnace designed to consume everything inside it. The stampede is as deadly as the fire. Panicked workers trample the fallen. Children are crushed underfoot. Women are pushed aside by stronger men. The disabled are abandoned. The elderly are left to burn. In the face of death, civilization collapses into animal desperation. You've seen the aftermath. Bodies stacked like cordwood in the factory yard. Families searching through the charred remains for recognizable pieces of their loved ones. A wedding ring fused to a finger bone. A locket melted into a chest. A shoe with a foot still inside it. The lucky ones die quickly from smoke inhalation. The unlucky ones burn alive, their screams echoing through the factory until the flames consume their vocal cords. Some survive with burns covering 90% of their bodies. They linger for days, weeks, begging for death that won't come. The company rebuilds within a month. New machines, new workers, same locked doors. The newspapers stop reporting. The families stop asking questions. The cycle begins again. Fire is not an accident in the industrial age. It's a feature of the system. You learn to map escape routes in your mind. Which windows might break if you threw a stool? Which doors might give way if enough people pushed? Which walls might collapse if you kicked hard enough? You sleep with your shoes on, your coat within reach. You keep a wet cloth in your pocket to cover your mouth and nose. But deep down, you know the truth. When the fire comes, and it will come, most of you will die. The factory is a death trap disguised as a workplace. The owners know it. The overseers know it. The workers know it. But the machines must keep running. The profits must keep flowing. The system must be fed. The fire department will arrive too late. The doors will be locked. The windows will be barred. The stairs will collapse. The ceiling will fall. You will burn alive in a cage of your own making, your screams joining the chorus of the damned. Fire is not rare. It is inevitable. So is death by stampede when panic hits. You are not a worker. You are kindling for the industrial furnace. When you burn, they will sweep up your ashes and hire someone new. Part 9. Rebellion and Punishment. Some whisper of unions. Some try to fight back, but the bosses have police and soldiers. Strikers are beaten or arrested. You saw a man hanged for demanding bread. You've learned to keep your head down for now. The word union is spoken in whispers, passed from worker to worker, like a dangerous secret. To say it too loudly means unemployment. To act on it means violence. But desperation breeds courage, and courage breeds revolution. The question isn't whether workers will rebel. The question is how brutally the rebellion will be crushed. Thomas Hartwell was the first to speak openly about organizing. He stood on a wooden crate during the lunch break, his voice carrying across the factory yard. "We are not machines," he shouted. "We are human beings with rights, with dignity, with the power to demand better." The workers gathered around him, their faces hungry for hope. The foreman noted every face in that crowd. By evening, half of them were fired. By morning, Thomas Hartwell was dead. They found his body in the river, weighted down with stones, his tongue cut out. The message was clear: silence or death. But Thomas had planted seeds in the boarding houses, in the ale houses, in the dark corners where desperate people gather. Workers began to organize. They formed secret societies with coded handshakes and hidden meetings. They called themselves the Sons of Labor, the Brotherhood of the Loom, the United Workers of Manchester. The first strike was small: 12 women who worked the night shift at the Blackwood Mill. They wanted 10 minutes for a meal break, a penny more per hour, clean water to drink, reasonable demands from reasonable people. The owners responded with unreasonable violence. Company guards surrounded the mill at dawn. They carried clubs, whips, and pistols. The striking women were dragged from their boarding house beds and beaten in the street. Margaret O'Brien, a mother of 3, had her arm broken with an iron rod. Susan Mills, barely 16, was horsewhipped until her back was raw meat. The local magistrate, whose brother owned the mill, issued arrest warrants for inciting riot and disturbing the peace. The women were sentenced to 6 months in Newgate Prison, where they would share cells with murderers and thieves. 3 of them died of typhus before their sentences ended. The strike spread despite the violence. Workers at the Cromwell factory walked out in solidarity. Then the Peterson Mill. Then the entire textile district. For 3 days, the machinery stood silent. For 3 days, the workers tasted freedom. For 3 days, they believed they could win. The owners called in the military. The 42nd Regiment of Foot marched into Manchester with bayonets fixed and orders to restore order. General Morrison, a veteran of the Napoleonic Wars, treated the striking workers like enemy combatants. He declared martial law, banned public gatherings, and authorized soldiers to shoot anyone who resisted. The massacre happened on a Thursday morning in St. Peter's Field. 60,000 workers had gathered for a peaceful demonstration. They brought their wives, their children, their hopes for a better future. They sang hymns, waved banners, and listened to speeches about dignity and justice. The cavalry charged without warning. Sabers flashed in the sunlight. Horses trampled children underfoot. The crowd panicked, crushing itself in the desperate flight from death. When the smoke cleared, 11 people lay dead and 400 were wounded. The newspapers called it the Peterloo Massacre, mocking the workers' defeat. James Morrison, a weaver who lost his leg in the charge, was arrested for seditious assembly. During his trial, he said, "I asked for bread, and you gave me steel. I asked for justice, and you gave me chains. I asked for dignity, and you gave me death. He was sentenced to transportation to Australia, where he would die in a penal colony. The surviving strike leaders were hunted like animals. Henry Patterson hid in a coal cellar for 2 weeks before soldiers found him. They dragged him to the town square and hanged him from a gibbet as a warning to others. His body swayed in the wind for 3 days before his family was allowed to cut it down. The factories reopened with new rules. No gatherings of more than 3 workers, no discussions of wages or conditions, no books or newspapers that might contain seditious ideas. Informants were planted among the workers, paid to report on their colleagues' conversations. You learned to recognize the informants. They were too well-fed, too well-dressed, too eager to complain about working conditions. They would steer conversations toward dangerous topics, then disappear for private meetings with the foreman. Workers who trusted them would vanish in the night, arrested on charges of conspiracy. The union movement went underground. Meetings were held in abandoned warehouses, in church basements, in the back rooms of sympathetic taverns. Members used false names and coded language. They swore oaths of secrecy, sealed with blood. Getting caught meant death, but doing nothing meant slow starvation. The owners hired private armies to crush resistance. The Pinkertons, the Black Watch, the Industrial Guard, professional killers who specialized in breaking strikes and murdering union organizers. They infiltrated worker meetings, provoked violence, and created excuses for brutal crackdowns. Children were used as weapons against their parents. Factory owners would threaten to fire entire families if one member joined a union. They would reduce rations, increase working hours, or transfer families to worse jobs. The message was clear: rebel and watch your children starve. The legal system was rigged against workers. Judges were friends of factory owners. Juries were selected from property owners who despised the working class. Evidence of employer brutality was inadmissible, while worker testimony was dismissed as lies. Justice was a luxury only the wealthy could afford. You watched friends disappear. William Chen, who talked about organizing the Chinese workers, was found in the harbor with his throat cut. Maria Santos, who tried to start a women's union, was arrested for prostitution and sent to a workhouse. Father O'Malley, who preached about workers' rights, was transferred to a parish in remote Ireland. The punishment extended beyond individual rebels. Entire families were blacklisted. Their names circulated among factory owners to ensure they would never work again. Children were barred from schools. Wives were refused service at shops. The community was turned against itself through fear and economic pressure. But the spark of rebellion could not be extinguished. In secret meetings, in whispered conversations, in the darkness of exhausted hearts, workers continued to organize. They knew that solidarity was their only weapon against the machine that consumed them. They knew that silence meant death, but so did speaking out. You learned to keep your head down, to avoid the informants, to say nothing that could be used against you. But in your heart, you carried the flame of resistance. You waited for the day when the workers would rise again, when the machinery would stop, when the bosses would face justice for their crimes. That day would come. The only question was how many would die before it arrived. Part 10. Will you survive? You've made it to age 20. Most don't. You've lost friends to machines, disease, childbirth, starvation, and fire. If you survive, it's not because you're strong. It's because you were lucky. The factory never cared. The machine still grinds. 20 years old, In the world outside these factory walls, you would be considered young, full of potential, at the beginning of your adult life. But inside this industrial hellscape, you are ancient. Your body bears the scars of countless battles with machinery that shows no mercy. Your lungs are black with cotton dust and coal smoke. Your back is permanently bent from years of hunching over looms. Your fingers are gnarled and scarred from countless cuts and burns. Look in the mirror, if you can find one. The face staring back is not the face of a 20-year-old. It's the face of someone who has seen too much, suffered too much, endured too much. Your eyes are hollow, ringed with dark circles that speak of sleepless nights and constant pain. Your cheeks are sunken from malnutrition. Your teeth, what's left of them, are brown and rotted from the sugar-free diet of gruel and contaminated water. You've buried more friends than most people meet in a lifetime. Little Jenny Morrison, who started working beside you when she was 7, crushed by a falling beam during her 2nd year. Thomas Bradley, whose hand was mangled in the machinery and who died of infection a week later. Sarah Walsh, who burned alive in the factory fire last spring. Michael O'Brien, who contracted tuberculosis and coughed his lungs out over 6 agonizing months. Each death taught you something new about survival. Jenny's death taught you to always look up, to watch for loose beams and falling equipment. Thomas's death taught you to keep your hands moving, never to reach too far into the machinery, never to assume the equipment is safe. Sarah's death taught you to memorize every exit, every window, every possible escape route. Michael's death taught you to sleep with your head elevated, to spit out the blood quietly so the overseers won't hear. The mathematics of survival in the industrial age are brutal and simple. Of every 100 children who enter the factory at age 6, fewer than 20 will see their 15th birthday. Of those 20, fewer than 10 will reach 25. Of those 10, fewer than 5 will live to see 30. You are already a statistical anomaly, a winner in a lottery where the prize is simply not dying. But survival is not living. You exist in a state of constant vigilance, always watching for the next threat, the next accident, the next disease. Your body is a map of near misses and close calls. The scar on your forearm from the loom that nearly took your hand, the burn on your shoulder from the steam pipe that burst, the persistent cough that reminds you daily that your lungs are slowly filling with dust. You've learned to read the signs that predict death, the way a worker's skin turns gray when consumption takes hold, the vacant stare that comes before someone breaks mentally and walks into the machinery, the fever that burns in a woman's eyes when childbirth infection sets in, the trembling hands that signal a worker is about to collapse from exhaustion. Most importantly, you've learned not to form attachments. Every friendship is a potential source of grief. Every romance is a likely tragedy. Every child you help train is probably going to die before they reach adulthood. Emotional numbness is a survival mechanism, a way to protect what's left of your sanity from the constant parade of death and suffering. The factory owners have calculated your life expectancy down to the month. They know exactly how long the average worker will last under specific conditions. They've optimized the system to extract maximum labor from your body before it breaks down completely. You are not a person to them. You are a resource to be consumed as efficiently as possible. Your survival has come at a cost that goes beyond physical damage. You've watched children die and said nothing. You've seen women assaulted and turned away. You've witnessed safety violations that you knew would kill someone and kept quiet to protect your job. Each compromise chipped away at your humanity, leaving you hollowed out and morally exhausted. The system has taught you to compete with other workers rather than support them. When there are only enough jobs for half the people who need them, solidarity becomes a luxury you can't afford. You've taken shifts from workers who were fired for organizing. You've worked through strikes that might have improved conditions for everyone. You've survived by stepping on the backs of others who didn't. But perhaps the cruelest trick of industrial capitalism is that it makes you complicit in your own exploitation. You've internalized the logic of the system. You believe that your suffering is necessary, that the factory owners deserve their wealth, that workers who die simply weren't strong enough, or careful enough, or lucky enough. You've become a collaborator in your own oppression. The few workers who do survive to middle age are broken shells of human beings. They move like ghosts through the factory, their spirits crushed by decades of brutality. They train new children with dead eyes, passing on the lessons of survival without the hope that things might someday improve. They are living warnings of what awaits those who endure too long in hell. Your survival is not a victory. It's a tragic accident, a glitch in a system designed to consume human lives. You've made it to 20, not because you're stronger or smarter or more deserving than those who died. You've made it because chaos is random, because accidents are unpredictable, because death sometimes misses its target. The machine that has ground up your friends, your family, your community is still running. It will continue to run long after you're gone. New children will take your place. New workers will feed the machinery. New generations will be sacrificed to the altar of industrial progress. Your survival changes nothing about the fundamental nature of the system. The factory never cared about you. It never will. You are interchangeable parts in a machine that values profit over human life. When you finally collapse, when your body finally gives out, when your luck finally runs out, they will replace you within hours. Your death will be noted in a ledger. Your body will be dumped in a pauper's grave, and the machines will keep running. The machine still grinds. It always will. Your survival is not a triumph of human will over industrial brutality. It's a temporary reprieve from an inevitable fate. You've won a battle in a war that can never be won, earned a few more years in a life that should never have been so hard. You've made it to 20. Most don't, but making it doesn't mean you've escaped. It just means you've lasted long enough to understand the true horror of the system that created you. You are not a survivor. You are a ghost haunting the machine that killed your soul. Thanks for watching No Sleep Historian. If you made it this far, you're already tougher than most. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications, because the past isn't done with us yet. If you made it this far, you're already tougher than most. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications, because the past isn't done with us yet.